Hi, friends. Hope you're doing well. Breaking news: Israel has attacked Persia. So this has been a long time in the coming. It's They've been talking about something like this for a long time, and uh, in my opinion, I think Netanyahu and Israel has attempted to tried everything in its power to try to avoid this point in history, but a page of history has definitely turned. This is a unique time in history, which how this will play out will be very interesting, to say the least. We need to be praying for Israel, the Jewish people. We need to be praying for people of Persia, people of Israel, or of Iran. They certainly, we don't want them to be hurt either. But clearly, this is a time in which I think a page in history has definitely been marked. So there's some things that, as from a Christian perspective, we expected this to happen long ago, and these things have been building up for a while since a number of attacks. I mean, you had the two large ballistic missile attacks from Iran on Israel, which they didn't respond at the request of really the American leadership, who told them not to escalate this, take the win, as Biden did, and basically just threw Israel under a bus after being attacked by over 300 ballistic missiles and hundreds of um, uh, drone attacks on their people. And fortunately, God watched over them and protected them, and nobody was killed in those attacks. But I mean, tens of thousands of people could have been killed in those attacks. It truly was a miracle in our time, and some people forget that or miss that. When 300 ballistic missiles are shot down or miss their targets completely, that's a miracle in the making. So. Um, and a lot of this goes back to what we would look at as Christians. So when we look at this, we see that the Bible talks about this time in which these events are going to come to a climax, and part of this climax involves a nation called Persia or Iran, and they're involved in this. And one of the some of the key verses that we would look at would be like in Daniel chapter 10, verse 13, where it talks about this the prince of the kingdom of Persia, who was basically taking a stand against the angel who was going to come and reveal to Daniel a message from God, and that was something that was uh, he was trying to prevent him from delivering that message, and ultimately the archangel Michael stands up and comes to his rescue or his aid, and allows for him to continue and bring his message to Daniel. It's a very important passage because it shows the angelic war that takes place in heavenly places, that we truly do have spiritual forces arrayed against us. And as we go out to do God's bidding or his what He would have us to do, you have to remember there are forces that are fighting against our ability to do that, and we see that just in a small snippet in Daniel chapter 10, where this takes place, this angelic war that's happening, and which tells us that there's a true spiritual war taking place as well as a physical war. And what we're seeing right now, this physical war is being played out in Iran, and right now today, is because of the spiritual war as well. So the spiritual war is bleeding over into the physical, and it's a time in which good reflection and prayer and knowing God's word. That it's not something we need to fear, but certainly need to be aware of. Events that may ultimately come out of this is what we're going to address and what we're going to look at. One of those passages well known to Christians, but if you don't know these, we'll kind of touch on those, and that would be a prophecy about the destruction of Damascus in Isaiah 17. We know that Damascus has been attacked numerous times by Israel, and that ultimately Damascus will be destroyed. Uh, how that will play out is that I believe anyway that Iran, who's had lots of forces in Damascus and around Damascus, has developed and put forces there. Uh, are they there now? No, but who knows how that situation is, or what kind of weapons or whatever they've got there that they left there. But the Iranian Guard of Iran was there for a long time, and they've embedded themselves there. And it'd be really naive to think that they don't have some covert forces there, and how this will play out ultimately. But the Bible does clearly state that the Damascus will be destroyed, and how that may play out could be in a case in which they have some kind of weapons that they station there to attack Israel, that may not even be known to the current regimes uh, of modern day Syria. And but if they do attack Israel, the response, especially if it's chemical, biological, or even nuclear, you would see a devastating nuclear attack, most likely from uh, Israel in that case, and that would bring about the world's condemnation of Israel, which, interesting enough, Isaiah 17 basically alludes to as you read through the rest of that chapter. And it talks about the destruction of Damascus. It also goes on to talk about how Israel will become very lean. In essence, will become very, ostracized. Economic sanctions, things like that, would be put against it by the nations of the world. And I think that's what it's alluding to. So we could definitely be seeing something like that potentially happening. And this could become a really big event. I mean, how this will spiral out of control, we don't know. How what will happen. It may just end in one big fizzle and nothing happens. But if Iran attacks, responds with ballistic missiles, especially if they start attacking American forces or naval installations, that can certainly happen. It can start attacking major installations of like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, those kind of places. It could certainly develop out of control very quickly. And who else would get spun into this war then or brought into it? Well, the Bible does talk about that. Ultimately, there's going to be a war between Israel and Persia or Iran, and that ultimately Russia will be pulled into this war against its will. That hooks, it says, will be put into his jaw and be dragged out of the far north, extreme far north. Well, if you look at Israel, extreme far north of Israel is Russia. And it says that, and who just so happens to be on a war footing in a military war in which they've got a number of people. They've increased their forces dramatically for the war that they're fighting in Ukraine. And it says that they will be dragged out of the north into this war and to invade Israel. And ultimately, we're going to wind up seeing Turkey and modern day Libya and Persia, who will be involved in this end times, latter days invasion of Israel. And we see that in Ezekiel 38, 39. It's known as the Gog-Magog War, which many have talked about, many Christians have written about, but it bears for us to at least take a look at it with the events that are happening right now. And that would be that in verse 4, it talks about that in verse 38, or chapter 38, verse 4, it says, I will turn you about and put hooks in your jaws, and I will bring you out and all your army. And it goes on to talk about who those nations are that will be with them in verse 5 of that same chapter. Persia, which is modern day Iran, Ethiopia, and Put is modern day Libya. It goes on to talk about Gomer and its troops of Beth Gomer from the remote parts north, with all its troops and many people with you. And most people look at Beth Gomer as Turkey, modern day Turkey. Be prepared and prepare yourself with all your companies and assemble about and be a guard for them. It's going to be the one who ultimately will be its supplier of weapons. And who is the supplier of most of those weapons and equipment? It's Russia. And it says, after many days you will be summoned in the latter years. You will come down out of your land and that is restored from the sword, whose inhabitants have been gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which have been a continual way. So we know that it's going to come against Israel. The people will be brought back from the nations, and that's clearly what we see today. The Jews that live there have been brought back from the nations. Israel's been reestablished, and it will be in the latter years, which tells us this is a latter-day event. It picks that same thing up in verse 16 of the same chapter 38, where it says, and you will come up against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land, and it will come about in the latter days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations will know that I am when I am sanctified, or know me when I am sanctified through you before their eyes. So God's going to judge these coalition of nations and bring a judgment against them. So it's important to remember that he's not just going to allow for them to be destroyed. In fact, in the preceding verse to that, verse 15, he says, you will come from your place in the remote parts of the north. Well, remote parts of the north of Israel is Russia. And when you look at that, it goes on to say that you and many peoples will be with you. And it goes on to say that a great assembly and a mighty army, and you will come against my people. And then ultimately, he says that he's going to destroy them. And he says that in verses 18 and 19, and he says that it will come about in that day when God comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord, that my fury will mount up in my anger and in my zeal and my blazing wrath, I will declare in that day that there will surely be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. This earthquake will ultimately develop into a judgment in which verses 21 and verses 21 talks about this great sword. He says, I will call for a sword against him and on my mountains. Well, who's the sword? Well, a sword represents a military that force that will come against them. Well, who could stand up against a force of Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya? Well, really, most likely it's going to be America. I think America might be that sword that's talked about. So we may be seeing events, if it does go to the point of an invasion, we could very well be seeing a major cataclysmic war that will take place that will, I believe, go nuclear. And how I come to that conclusion will be in the following verses of verse 22 of the same chapter 38. He says, with pestilence and with blood I will enter into my judgment with him, and I will rain on him and on his troops and on many people with him, and torrential rain and hailstones and fire and brimstone. And when you start talking about those things of fire and brimstone and things like that, it's a perfect representation of a nuclear weapon that would come against them, that will destroy them. How that will play out, who knows at the end of the day. But clearly, if you invaded Israel, I think they would be forced to use their nuclear weapons. So we don't know how this will play out ultimately, but we could see a massive confrontation that's brewing right now. Clearly, we need to be praying, but at the same time, we need to be praying for God's will to be done in all things. So anyway, just wanted to know, I'll let you know about this, events that are taking place. Clearly, it's a pretty amazing event that's been looked for a long time, and here we are seeing at least elements that could potentially lead into what we would perceive events that will ultimately lead to the latter times and the end times of events. Not that we're wishing for war, but certainly looking for the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. So be in prayer, be praying for Israel, be praying for the peace to ultimately win out, but ultimately we're praying for God's will to be done. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, but be safe, keep looking up, and be in prayer. We'll see you.